The house was quiet that evening. Only two people sat at the dinner table, Layla and her mother, Mirembe. There was no birthday cake, no decorations, no music, just silence and the smell of plain rice. Layla looked nervous. Her fingers held a small gift, wrapped with simple paper. She pushed it across the table with a shy smile and said softly, "I'm sorry, Mama. I couldn't afford much this year." Mirembe slowly unwrapped the gift. Inside was a tiny keychain, handmade, with a little wooden heart. She held it in her palm for a moment, then looked at her daughter with a raised eyebrow. A second later, she gave a short, sharp laugh. "All that schooling, all those big dreams, and this is what you bring me? Rubbish," she said. The words hit Layla like a slap, but it wasn't the insult that hurt the most. It was the laughter, that cold laugh from the one person she wanted to make proud. Layla lowered her eyes, trying not to cry. She didn't say it out loud, but that day she had walked nearly 3 hours just to save the money she would have spent on transport. She skipped breakfast. She ignored the pain in her shoes, all just so she could save a little something to buy even that tiny gift. Her salary was small, her bills were many, but her heart was full of love for her mother. She had hoped the little keychain would make her smile. Instead, it made her laugh in the worst way. Mirembe didn't ask how Layla got there or if she had eaten. She didn't see the tired eyes or the bruises on her feet. She only saw the small gift and judged it like it was a test. Layla sat there in silence, her head slightly bowed. She didn't defend herself. She just nodded quietly and helped clear the plates like nothing happened. But deep inside, something had changed. The pain didn't break her. It planted a seed, and Mirembe had no idea what that tiny, quiet moment would one day grow into. 1 week later, something unexpected happened. Layla sent her mother a message, an invitation for dinner. It wasn't just any dinner. It was a reservation for 2 at a very fancy place in town, a restaurant called Maison Zola. Everyone knew that name. It was the most expensive restaurant in the city, where rich people went to show off and celebrate. The kind of place someone like Mirembe never thought her daughter could afford. When Mirembe saw the invitation, she didn't smile. Instead, she laughed with disbelief. "You," she said loudly. "Dinner there?" She rolled her eyes. "Let me come and see how far you'll embarrass me this time." She spoke as if it was all a joke, like she was just going for fun to see what nonsense Layla had planned now. Deep down, she didn't believe her daughter could afford it. She thought maybe someone rich was helping Layla. Maybe she had found a man to pay the bill. Maybe she was trying to impress her again and would end up failing, like always. Still, Mirembe accepted the invitation, not because she was touched, but because she was curious. She wanted to see for herself how Layla was going to mess this up. So, she took her time getting ready. She pulled out her best lace dress, the one she usually kept for weddings or special church events. She wore her gold earrings and painted her nails. She even put on red lipstick and high heels. She wanted to look like a queen, just in case there were people to impress. And she wanted to look better than Layla, no matter what. Before leaving the house, she even told a few neighbors. "My daughter invited me to Maison Zola," she said, with a smirk. "Let's see who she's begging money from now." Some of them laughed with her, shaking their heads, thinking it must be another one of Layla's failed surprises. But 1 or 2 paused and wondered, what if it wasn't? As Mirembe walked to the restaurant that evening, she held her chin high. She looked around to see who might be watching. She felt proud, not because she believed in her daughter, but because she believed she was going somewhere important, somewhere she never imagined she would step into. But in her heart, she still doubted everything. She thought it would end in shame. Maybe they'd be asked to leave. Maybe the food would come, and there'd be no money to pay. She was ready to laugh again. She had no idea that this dinner was not about embarrassment, but about something much bigger, something that would change everything. Layla stood outside the grand doors of Maison Zola, her hands slightly shaking. Her dress was old and faded, the colors washed out from too many washes. Her shoes had thin soles and tiny cracks near the toes. Anyone looking at her might think she was lost or at the wrong place. But Layla didn't care. She didn't come to show off her clothes or pretend to be rich. She came with something more powerful than money, a plan in her heart and a calm fire in her eyes. She walked in slowly, carefully, like someone who had walked this path in her dreams 100 times. The lights inside sparkled, soft music played in the background, and everything smelled of luxury. As she stepped closer to the entrance, the maitre d', a tall man in a neat black suit, looked up and recognized her. She leaned in, whispered something into his ear, and the man nodded respectfully, even bowed slightly. It was a small moment, but a big one for her. Mirembe, who had just arrived, saw the whole thing. She blinked and tilted her head. "He knows you?" she asked, clearly surprised. In her mind, this kind of man only bowed to rich people, not to girls like Layla. How could her daughter know someone so important here? Layla didn't say much. She just gave a soft smile, the kind that hides 1,000 secrets, and motioned for her mother to sit. "Please sit. Order whatever you like," she said gently, her voice calm and confident. Mirembe hesitated for a second, confused. She looked around at the rich people seated at golden tables, the well-dressed waiters moving smoothly between them. She still didn't believe Layla could afford any of this. But the way her daughter spoke, it wasn't begging, it wasn't nervous. It was steady, like she belonged here. There was no sign of panic on Layla's face, no fear of bills, no fake smiles, just quiet strength. She didn't have a single penny in her pocket that day, but she carried something far more valuable, belief in herself, and a plan she had worked on for years. This was more than just dinner. It was the beginning of something Mirembe couldn't yet see. And Layla, though tired and dressed in old clothes, had never felt more ready in her life. The waiter came to their table with a fancy bottle of wine. He poured it slowly into tall, clear glasses. The smell was rich, the kind that made people feel important. Mirembe's eyes lit up. She looked around to see who was watching. She sat up straighter, her smile wide. This was the kind of treatment she always dreamed of, being served like a queen. She lifted her glass with pride and took a small sip. "Imported," she whispered to herself. "This is not cheap wine." She reached for her phone, excited. Right there at the table, she started a video call with some of her friends. "Look where I am," she said, turning the camera to show the golden lights, the velvet chairs, the clean white tablecloth. "My daughter finally did something right," she added, loud enough so everyone could hear. She laughed, proud and loud, holding up the glass for her friends to see. Layla sat across from her, quiet. She smiled too, but it was a small, tired smile. She watched her mother enjoy the moment. Mirembe kept talking, showing off every part of the restaurant. She opened the big menu and tried to read it, but the names were in French, and the prices made her blink. Still, she acted like she understood everything. The waiter returned to take their order, and Mirembe waved her hand like a madam. "Bring us your best," she said. Then she looked at Layla and asked, "But how are you paying for all this?" Layla froze for a second. Her fingers touched the edge of her glass. They trembled slightly, but she quickly covered it up by reaching for her napkin. Her eyes didn't meet her mother's. She took a breath and said softly, "I'll explain after dessert." Mirembe raised her eyebrow. "After dessert?" she repeated. "Why not now?" Layla just nodded, her voice calm, but her hands shaking a little. "After dessert, Mama," she said again, trying to hold back the storm of emotions inside. In that moment, Mirembe didn't notice the worry in her daughter's eyes. She was too busy feeling proud in front of her friends, enjoying the spotlight. She thought this dinner was just about food, wine, and showing off. But Layla knew it was something much deeper. She just needed a little more time before telling the truth. A truth that would soon change everything. Just as the dessert was about to be served, something unexpected happened. The lights in the restaurant slowly dimmed, and a soft silence fell over the room. The music stopped playing, and people began to look around, wondering what was going on. Mirembe paused mid-sentence, holding her spoon in the air. "What's happening?" she asked, looking around in confusion. Then, one by one, all the waiters started coming out from the kitchen. They weren't carrying food. They weren't serving anyone. They were walking slowly, calmly, forming a neat line across the front of the restaurant. Everyone watched in silence, curious and surprised. Even the chef came out, wearing his white uniform and tall hat. It was clear now, this wasn't a normal part of dinner. A man in a dark suit stepped forward. He was the restaurant manager, and he held a microphone in his hand. He looked around the room, smiled and said, "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. We have a very special announcement." Murmurs filled the room. People started whispering to each other. Phones were raised, some recording the moment, others trying to guess what the surprise could be. Mirembe, now fully alert and excited, clapped her hands lightly and leaned closer. "Is it a celebrity?" she whispered to Layla, her eyes wide. "Is someone famous here tonight?" Layla didn't answer. She just looked ahead, her hands folded in her lap, her heart beating faster than ever before. Her mouth was dry, her fingers cold, but her eyes stayed fixed on the stage. The manager continued, "Tonight is not just another evening at Maison Zola. Tonight marks a historic change in this restaurant story." The room grew even quieter. Mirembe couldn't hold her excitement. She clapped again, this time louder. "I knew it," she whispered with pride. "This is big." But while everyone waited to hear about a celebrity or a new menu, something far more meaningful was about to happen. Something no one in the room could have guessed, especially not Mirembe. She still believed this was just a fancy dinner, a lucky treat her daughter somehow arranged. She had no idea that the truth behind the lights, the waiters, and the announcement was connected to the quiet girl sitting across from her. Layla took a deep breath, her fingers now slightly shaking under the table. This was the moment she had waited for, a moment of truth, not just for the people in the restaurant, but for her mother, the woman who had once laughed at her gift, who had doubted her worth. And in just a few seconds, everything would begin to unfold. The room was quiet, eyes fixed on the front where the manager stood. Then, the doors at the back of the restaurant slowly opened. Everyone turned to see who was coming. The soft sound of heels echoed across the floor. A woman stepped in, walking with calm, steady steps. She wore a fitted emerald green dress that hugged her gently. Her hair was neatly styled, her posture tall and proud. There was something about her presence that made people take notice. As she walked in, the staff began to clap. One by one, even the customers stood up, not because they were told to, but because they felt like something special was happening. There was a quiet respect in the room, like everyone sensed they were watching someone important walk by. Mirembe, still seated, turned to look. Her eyes widened the moment she saw the woman. She froze. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Her heart skipped a beat. It was Layla, but not the Layla she knew. This wasn't the tired girl with worn-out shoes and a quiet voice. This wasn't the daughter who once brought her a small keychain and said sorry for not having money. No, this Layla was different. She looked strong. She looked calm, confident, like someone who had fought a long battle and won. Her shoulders were straight, her steps graceful, her face glowing with peace and pride. Mirembe couldn't understand what was happening. Her daughter, the same girl she once called useless, was now being clapped for by strangers. The staff, who served expensive food and wine every day, were now standing for her. Even the chef was nodding with a smile. It felt like the whole room was celebrating her. Layla didn't look at anyone else. Her eyes stayed focused as she walked forward. She didn't need to rush. She wasn't afraid. This was her moment, and she owned it completely. Mirembe sat there, still confused, still stunned. She looked at Layla like she was seeing her for the first time. Her daughter had changed, not just in appearance, but in presence. She looked like someone who had been through pain, silence, and long nights, and turned all of it into quiet power. Nothing needed to be said yet. The way Layla walked, the way people stood, the way her green dress moved with grace, it all spoke louder than words. And in that moment, Mirembe finally realized this dinner was not a surprise gift. It was a statement. The manager turned to Layla and gently handed her the microphone. The room fell into complete silence. All eyes were on her now. Layla held the mic with both hands, took a quiet breath, and looked around the restaurant. She paused for a moment before speaking, her voice calm but strong. "I used to scrub dishes in this kitchen," she said, and there was a soft gasp from the crowd. "I started here when I had nothing. No money, no help, just a dream that I kept in my heart." People leaned forward in their seats. Even the staff listened closely, their eyes full of respect. Layla looked around the room again, then turned slowly toward her mother. Her voice softened, but it didn't shake. "And Mama," she said gently, "this dinner, it's not a gift. It's not about wine or food. It's a moment." Mirembe blinked, stunned, still trying to process what she was hearing. Her eyes met her daughter's, this time not with judgment, but with deep surprise. "This," Layla continued, "is to show you something. I didn't need to beg anyone. I didn't need to borrow or fake anything. I didn't need money to buy your love." She looked down for a second, holding back a wave of emotion, then looked back up, more confident than ever. "But I used the pain," she said. "Every insult, every laugh, every time you said I wasn't enough, I used it. I turned that pain into fire, and I built my own empire. The room stayed quiet, not because they didn't care, but because they were moved. Some guests had tears in their eyes. Even the waiters looked proud, nodding softly as if they had watched her journey unfold silently over the years. Layla looked back at her mother again, this time with eyes that didn't seek approval, but offered peace. You once laughed at a small gift I gave you. You didn't see what I was trying to give. But now I give you this moment, not to win your love, but to let you see me. Mirembe couldn't speak. Her hands were still, her mouth slightly open. She didn't know whether to cry or clap. All she knew was that her daughter, the one she had doubted for so long, was now standing in front of her, not just proud, but powerful, and around them, the room filled with quiet awe. Because this wasn't just a dinner anymore, it was history being made. The dinner was over, but the night was not. Layla gently stood from the table and nodded for her mother to follow. Mirembe, still in shock, slowly got up. She didn't ask questions. She couldn't. Her thoughts were spinning too fast. She followed Layla through the restaurant, past the tables, the lights, and the people who now looked at her daughter with deep respect. As they stepped outside, a soft breeze moved through the air. The street was quiet for a second. Then suddenly, lights flashed. A bright new sign above the restaurant lit up. The letters were clear and glowing. Mirembe's garden, a daughter's dedication. People standing nearby gasped. Some clapped. Others brought out their phones. News cameras were already there, recording, snapping pictures. Curious passers-by stopped to watch, wondering what this beautiful moment was about. Mirembe stood frozen. Her eyes moved slowly from the glowing sign to her daughter's face. She didn't speak. She couldn't. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The name above the building. It was her name, and the words beneath it felt like 1,000 emotions all at once. Her daughter had named the restaurant after her. Layla didn't smile for the cameras. She didn't pose or wave. She wasn't here for fame. She was here for something much deeper. Her eyes, calm and full of emotion, stayed locked on her mother's tear-filled eyes. Then, in the softest voice, Layla said, "No more small boxes, Mama. Only legacies." It wasn't just a sentence. It was a message, a promise, a line drawn between who she used to be and who she had become. Layla wasn't asking for love anymore. She wasn't trying to prove herself. She had done it. And now, she had turned all the pain, all the silence, all the laughter she had once swallowed into something big, lasting, and beautiful. Mirembe's eyes welled up. She wanted to say something, anything, but her voice wouldn't come. She simply stood there, watching the name light up in the night sky, knowing that her daughter had done this, not for attention, not for show, but for something far greater than a birthday gift. And in that moment, with cameras flashing and strangers watching, the only thing that mattered was what passed between a mother's tears and a daughter's quiet strength. That night, after all the lights and cameras had faded, Mirembe sat quietly in the new VIP room of the restaurant. The room was peaceful, with soft lights and gentle music, but inside her heart, everything felt heavy and full. She had never felt this quiet before. Not because there was nothing to say, but because she finally saw everything she had missed for years. Across from her, Layla sat with her hands resting on the table. She wasn't wearing a proud smile or showing off. She just looked calm, as if a big weight had been lifted off her shoulders. Then slowly, she began to speak, not with anger, not with blame, just with truth. "Mama," she said softly, "you remember when you laughed at my keychain gift? That day, I had walked 3 hours to save money. I didn't eat anything the whole day. I had just enough to buy that small gift. I wanted to make you smile, but when you laughed, I went home and cried. Then I promised myself I would never let that kind of pain break me again." Mirembe's eyes filled with tears. She opened her mouth, but still, no words came. Layla continued, "I started working 3 jobs. I cleaned offices early in the morning, worked in a small shop during the day, and at night, I washed dishes in this very restaurant. I saved every little coin I could. Sometimes I didn't eat. Sometimes I slept only 2 hours. But I kept going." She paused and looked at her mother. "People here didn't know my story. They just saw a quiet girl working hard. But while I was scrubbing plates, I was also learning, watching, listening, and slowly, I bought my first 10% share. No loans, no help, just me. Then I bought more." Mirembe covered her mouth with her hand. Her daughter's voice, so calm and steady, broke something open inside her. She had never asked how Layla was doing. She had never said thank you. She had only judged her. Layla smiled gently. Every time you doubted me, I used that as fuel. Every insult became a push. Every cold look became a reason. I didn't do this to prove you wrong, Mama. I did it to prove to myself that I was worth more than what anyone believed. The room stayed quiet for a long time. Mirembe's heart was full of shame, pride, and pain, all at once. She looked at her daughter again, really looked, and for the first time, she saw not just her child, but a woman, a fighter, a builder, a daughter who had turned pain into power. The dessert plates were almost empty. The sweetness lingered on the table, but the real taste left behind was the truth, strong, raw, and unforgettable. Mirembe sat across from her daughter, her heart still heavy from everything she had just heard. Her eyes were no longer sharp with pride or doubt. Now, they were soft, full of things she didn't know how to say. She looked at Layla, her voice low and almost broken. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered. Layla looked back at her mother with a calm, gentle smile. Her eyes weren't angry, they were peaceful. She had nothing left to prove now. She simply said, "Because I needed to show you I was enough, even when you said I wasn't." Those words didn't come from pain anymore. They came from strength, from growth, from knowing her worth. Layla hadn't begged for love or chased after approval. She had quietly built a life. She didn't shout about her success. She showed it with action, with grace. Mirembe couldn't reply. She sat still, her eyes blinking fast to hold back tears. For years, she had laughed at Layla, judged her, and made her feel small. But now, all she could feel was pride and regret. Layla slowly stood up, her dress flowing gently as she pushed back her chair. She glanced at the bill on the table and walked away without touching it. There was no need to pay. The restaurant belonged to her. Every chair, every spoon, every light, they were hers now. People around the room looked at her with respect. They didn't see a poor girl. They didn't see someone begging for attention. They saw a woman who had built something big with her own hands. A woman who turned silence into strength and rejection into results. Layla didn't need to raise her voice. She didn't need to explain anymore. Everyone already knew her name. And as she walked away, Mirembe sat there in silence, watching the daughter she once underestimated walk with a power no one could deny. Not because she asked for love, but because she earned something even deeper: respect. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll without sharing. Tag someone who needs to hear. You don't need approval to be powerful. Double tap if you believe respect is earned, not begged for. Share to inspire the next daughter, sister, or friend who's building her legacy in silence.